Perfect. Okay, so the webinar is officially started. I wanted just beforehand to inform all of you that this webinar will be recorded. So if there are no objection on that, I will proceed. And I wanted to thank you, all the guest speakers today, to be here, and Sesimo to permit this webinar to happen. And also I wanted to welcome all the participants to today's webinar. Today's topic is why B2B data sharing is important for the manufacturing sector, and we will have different testimonials on this topic, especially high-level experts from the Commission, but also from the industry, that will give us a great outline on the issue. This is related to our strategy about data sharing in industrial environments and the analysis of the Data Act. But before starting, I want to leave the floor to our Director General, Mr. Philip Gertz, that will give us an overview about what's going on in the European Union right now and why this topic is very crucial and fundamental for our sector. So thank you very much. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gabriel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In the name of Sesimo, the European Association of the Machine Tools Industries and Related Manufacturing Technologies, I'm delighted to welcome you all to our webinar, Why B2B Data Sharing is Important for the Manufacturing Sector. Before I start my speech, I would like to say a few words about our industry of advanced manufacturing. Sesimo is the European Association representing the interest of the manufacturing technologies at EU level and globally. We represent approximately 1,500 companies, over 80% of which are small and medium-sized enterprises. We cover around 98% of the total machine tool production in Europe and more than a third worldwide. Our industry is very export-oriented. So remind that we are a worldwide leading industry composed of SMEs who are very export-oriented. Today's discussion will focus on the implications of the Data Act on B2B data sharing practices in the manufacturing sector. I believe that the topic of our event today could not be more timely, given the recently published Data Act proposal. This Data Act proposal will have a big impact on Europe's data economy and foster the uptake of innovative solutions. Digitalization is rapidly changing the business environment. Manufacturers are investing in the automation of operations and deployment of advanced manufacturing technologies, such as Industrial Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, and this all to increase productivity and reduce costs. Now, Europe is known worldwide for the quality of its data. Hence, effective data management is critical for companies that want to keep up with the digital transition. Indeed, one of the crucial aspects of the data economy is to exploit the potential of data sharing among businesses. This data sharing will increase the return on investment of SMEs by improving current production processes and accelerating innovation. In the manufacturing sector, the potential value of data sharing has been estimated at over $100 billion. Now, a month ago, the European Commission unveiled the Data Act, one of the most ambitious and controversial regulatory proposals of the last years. This Data Act sets new rules for data sharing and represents an important step to create an open single market for data. As a legislative initiative that is part of the EU's data strategy, it aligns with other important initiatives such as the EU Federated Cloud and the creation of both horizontal and sector-specific data spaces. But Mrs. Verhoeven will explain this in a few minutes. All of these initiatives are parts of a complex policy framework which can be incredibly disruptive for our sector and create a real revolution for the EU's digital economy. Overall, the Commission's approach to data aims to guarantee an autonomous role of the European business environment without depending on other jurisdictions and external market players. This is great. However, As the Data Act will set several limitations, we must aim for a final regulation that fosters data sharing practices rather than a set of obligations, compliance duties, and other implementation burdens. Moreover, if a strategic autonomy is widely recognized as important, the European strategy should not underestimate the necessity to provide a favorable environment for business operations and exchanging data abroad. Remember that we are a very export-oriented industry. To conclude, once again, I would like to underline that manufacturing is one of the industries that uses applications like industrial Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and machine learning technologies at their full potential. Therefore, we believe that cooperation and data sharing between the advanced manufacturing sectors across the EU is of strategic importance. It is central to supporting economic growth and technology development. And to make this happen successfully, we need a more tailored legislative framework that should ensure the use, protection, and traceability of data generated or co-generated by SMEs, and as such improve the productivity of industries. I would like to thank you for your attention, Gabriele Favoro for organizing it, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the opportunities and challenges that the Data Act brings along from our speakers. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our moderator. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Philip, for these words. They've been really helpful to us to have a frame of reference to start our conversation and the presentation of today's speakers. So, thank you very much again for this overview. And before starting and leaving the floor to Mrs. Verhoeven, I wanted just to give the audience a brief understanding of the structure of today's webinar. So, we will have the presentation of Ms. Amaryllis Verhoeven of around 15 minutes, especially focused on challenges and opportunities related to Data Act and data spaces, as also Philip anticipated. And in particular, we will, of course, focus our attention of how these aspects and this legislative proposal can actually transform businesses and business environment in Europe. After that, we will focus our attention on the industrial panel. So with a specific focus on industrial data sharing with the other three our guests, so Mr. Andrea Gozzi, Ms. Sara Teolaiz, and Dr. Christian Litke. So with that said, after their presentation and their insightful speeches, we will be able to interact, and we will have the final part of the webinar dedicated to the panel discussion and also dedicated to your direct questions that you can directly write on the Q&A box. We will be able to read it after the panel discussion and to discuss with you on the main important topics that will arise today after our guest speaker's presentation. So with that said, thank you very much. And now I wanted to leave the floor to Dr. Amaryllis Verhoeven, who is the head of unit for digital transformation of industry in DG GROW of the European Commission. So which we are treating today. So thank you very much for being here today and for accepting our invite. I leave you the floor. Please feel free to share with us which are the main points that the Commission wants to communicate to our environment, to the business, to the industry environment. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Many thanks for the invitation to all of you. I'm very pleased to be here and to discuss a topic which is very close to our heart. As the chair has already said, there is great value in B2B data sharing. You know that better than we do because you are in the business every day. From our side, we want to make sure that the right framework conditions are in place to really unlock the value of that data economy. And that's the reason why very early in the mandate, we came forward with the data strategy, which announced a number of initiatives, on many of which we have been delivering. And the Data Act is the most recent, but a very important part of that overall strategy. How do we see data sharing? Data sharing is already happening, of course, but we want to improve further the framework conditions in order to foster data sharing even more. Starting point is, sorry. Okay, that was my iPhone. Starting point for us is voluntary data sharing. And we are building the framework conditions to make that happen. Having said that, in some instances, we also believe it is necessary to come up with some dedicated rights. And these are the rights for the user, which I will explain in a minute. So what is the key aim and what are the key building blocks of the Data Act? First of all, the overall aim. Overall aim of the Data Act is to promote a fair allocation of the value of data, notably in situations of co-generations, of many people coming into play in the data sharing context. In order to achieve that, there are several building blocks in the Data Act. First of all, dedicated access rights for users. I will come back to that. Second, improved framework conditions in order to promote better voluntary data sharing. Third element in the Data Act is a dedicated access right for public sector players in certain circumstances, for emergency situations. Think of the pandemic, for instance. Fourth element in the Data Act is provisions to facilitate the switching of cloud services providers, plus also some provisions that contain safeguards against unwanted transfers of data outside the European Union. We're talking about unlawful transfers, not about the normal transfers. This is not about creating barriers. And then last but not least, provisions on interoperability. The Data Act is a horizontal framework. It is applying across the sectors, but it is also complemented by sector-specific initiatives. Some of them exist already, but for the car sector, as you know probably, we are about to launch our call for evidence, laying the basis for a more detailed framework for the sharing of in-vehicle data. So now, if you allow me, I'll zoom in on a couple of topics which I believe are important from a B2B perspective in the Data Act, just to give you some further information. And by the way, just for you to know, as you introduced myself, I am Amaryllis Verhoeven. I'm head of unit for digital transformation in DG Grow. The Data Act is very much the product of a joint venture working together amongst many services. And now that the file is actually on the table of the co-legislators, it is actually our colleagues in Connect, Ivo Volman and his team, who will actually drive through the negotiation process. And we from our side also will make sure that whatever inputs we will get from you today and in any other of the events also come there, just to explain you how we work together also in the European Commission. So focusing now on a number of issues which I understand are important for B2B data sharing. First of all, the framework of user access to co-generated data. This is a situation where I, as a user, I buy a robot, for instance, for my factory, or another machine, for instance, as a farmer, and that is a smart machine which accumulates data. Well, as a user, the Data Act will give me the right to give the data I co-generate by using that machine to a third party. And the manufacturer of the smart object must actually help me to do so by providing the necessary information. Why is that necessary? We do that in order to stimulate the provision of new services, repair services, maintenance services, predictive maintenance services, but also other innovative services that can only be realized if relevant players in those niche markets have access to relevant data. Data sharing with the third parties is subject to a duty to compensate, and there are also obvious restrictions in terms of use. And the most important one is that the data cannot be used neither by the user or the third party in order to just copy. Yeah? This is not a free license for the production of copycats. So what's in there for the manufacturer? The manufacturer can, of course, also continue to use the data, including the data of the user, but subject to transparency obligations. And then, as mentioned before, the manufacturer, and that's important as well, we believe, has safeguards against misappropriation. If there is a false representation of how data will be used, then there can be requests to stop the data sharing, destroy the data, and even stop producing machines which would be against the use for which the data right has been given. In that way, we hope to have achieved a balanced approach, giving incentives to manufacturers of smart objects to continue manufacturing those, whilst also making sure that there is an effective use of the data and that users can actually prevail themselves of the data they generate, not only personal data for which we have already the GDPR, but also the non-personal data in this context. Second element in the proposal, it is the more general framework conditions that apply across the board in any contractual situation. First, there are some provisions on unfair contract terms, and the idea is the following. In many situations where SMEs notably come into play, contractual conditions for data sharing are basically imposed in a unilateral manner, in a take it or leave it basis. Through the proposal, we want to make sure that any unfair terms, which would be imposed unilaterally, will not be binding on the weaker party, because otherwise this can be a way to stop effective data sharing against, by the back door. Then, as already mentioned, there are rights also in the Data Act to protect manufacturers against misappropriation of the data. And also the idea is to stimulate the use of smart contracts in order to prevent misappropriations from happening. Another element which I believe is quite important in the proposals are the provisions on interoperability. That's something we hear a lot from businesses. Yeah? Data sharing is important. We need to create data spaces. We need to make data available, but then data needs to come in a certain standardized form. In order to make that happen, we have created dedicated tools such as the creation of the Data Innovation Board. We are now working together with the standard setting organizations in order to make data interoperability a reality. You might have seen our standardization communication. Data interoperability is being flagged as one of the priorities. And we've created a legal basis actually for the Commission to step in should this process not lead to timely results. And that brings me to a last element. I think an important part of the puzzle is the work on the data spaces. Data spaces exist, they are being built. There's many private initiatives, and we welcome all of them. We, from a Commission side, are also offering our services and also public funding through the Digital Europe program in order to stimulate the creation of some data spaces. There's many of them. I just mentioned one, the one of probably the most interest to you, and that is the manufacturing data space, for which we have currently a call for proposals open to establish an appropriate governance framework. And that will then be the basis for further discussions with all the relevant players on how to best construct that manufacturing data space in order to further foster and stimulate the B2B data sharing. So this, by way of an introduction, I'm of course happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I will also take due note of the comments that you have, making sure that they land in the right places in the Commission, as we are now at the stage of negotiating also with the Council and the Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Verhoeven. And super interesting panel, because we touched upon actually the recurring topics that we will have today, from the approach in terms of manufacturers versus user to the interoperability or the switch among different cloud service providers, data transfer. So brief but very intense contribution in that sense, because I think these topics will arise again and again, also with the other guest speakers today. So thank you very much for that. And I would like to go forward and actually introduce our next speaker for the second section of today's webinar. And in particular, I would like to welcome Mr. Andrea Gozzi, who is General Manager MindSphere World Italy, that represents the entire hub for Southern Europe, and which is the international ecosystem for industrial Internet of Things. I don't want to anticipate anything more, because it will give us a real overview of what MindSphere is, what MindSphere World is, and how it is related to the world of data and industrial Internet of Things, of course. So thank you very much for being here today. I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Gabriele. Thank you, the organizer of this event, and good morning to all the participants. Thanks for the introduction. And so I'm ready to jump into my talk about the Shared Data Pools project. We as an association decided time ago to invest our time and our effort to create a collaboration framework for B2B data sharing. And I'm very happy today to have the chance to share this experience with you. Let me first introduce the association itself. MindSphere World is an association of companies. MindSphere World members fosters the adoption of Internet of Things digitalization in the industrial sector. We have members from many sectors, members with different profiles. We have many machine builders, we have components manufacturers, we have software vendors, independent software developers, consultants and contractors, also academics and some institutions as well. All the companies of MindSphere World believes in the importance of an ecosystem. We pursue the idea that ecosystem is the way to be successful with the digitalization in the industry. We adopt and we promote the ecosystem around MindSphere. MindSphere is the Internet of Things as a Service platform by Siemens. It's an open platform that allows every participant into the ecosystem to develop its own business made of components, connected devices, machines connected to the platform to provide digital services. And any company that wants to create a contribution into a digital platform by taking benefit of the contributors of others. This is the principles of what we call the power of many, which is the fundamental of an ecosystem and an association projects. We, as MindSphere World, are the voice of the community. So we are the voice of the companies that invest in this ecosystem. We are entitled to suggest new features for the core platforms. We define a new way to sell our apps by growing a digital marketplace, for example. We discuss legal terms of sharing applications and data. And of course, we do many other activities as every association does, like providing training, supporting pilot projects. We are facilitated because MindSphere itself as a core platform is by design a collaborative platform that allows sharing of data, a controlled share of data, and distribution of applications. But we still had the necessity to collaborate on data sharing and B2B data sharing. The association itself has grown a lot since its foundation. It was 2018. Now we are present in 7 hubs, 7 regional hubs, and we have more than 170 members worldwide. Important to mention that we have a strong presence of machine tool companies in the machine tool sector. We have 33 important companies in this sector, mainly from Germany and from Italy. And we are happy to state that the success rate of the industrial Internet of Things projects of our ecosystem adopters is higher than 60%. And this is an important result because we have a benchmark by the Polytechnical University of Milan that assess that the typical success rate of homegrown projects is limited to 5%. And also with our members, we assess that by leveraging a collaborative ecosystem, so using contributors of many to create the best IoT projects can reduce the cost of a project up to 90%, which is a dramatic KPI. Let's jump into the shared data pool project. This is a dedicated project to improve the way companies collaborate on data sharing and development of data-driven application. Enterprises recognize the importance of artificial intelligence or data-driven applications in different industrial scenarios, discrete manufacturing as well as process industries. The business logic of such applications are strongly related to the availability of data, of information. It's not possible to create valuable digital solutions without using a large quantity of qualified and valuable data set. But companies still struggle in getting these large data pools, especially if they try to create data pools on their own. So collaboration is a necessity. And unfortunately, companies are still reluctant to share data between parties. They still have concerns for good reasons. So the result we assessed years ago is there are impediments. The adoption of artificial intelligence application in B2B sectors, especially in the industrial sector, is slowed down by this situation. So we decided to launch a project with some leaders companies to simplify the way companies interact in sharing data and developing joint projects using data. And the projects took in consideration the different parts involved in those projects, starting from the data providers, so the companies producing the data by operating machines, operating plants, the use case orchestrator, so companies expecting results, expecting value from the applications, and companies processing the data, company able to transform the data in valuable information by either analytics or software application, and also of course, developers, suppliers, and auditors, why not? And this legal framework drives the actors in all the phases of a project, starting from the scouting of companies interested in a project, companies interested in joining a project to share data pools or to gather the results of a shared project, up to the delivery of the projects, the run phase of the projects, and also the after phase of the projects. And it covers all the processes. So how to discuss the goals, how to define what data are necessary, up to the definition of the legal documents. And the framework is based on guidelines, rules, and templates of legal contracts that are assessed by the community to cover all the aspects, all the different points of view, to simplify these phases of a collaborative database project. The result of the work is more than a framework, more than a set of guidelines and templates for legal documents. It's also a digital application running live on the web, and you are free to browse it, and we encourage you to browse it. It's an application that simplifies the interaction of the different participants by publishing the available projects on a kind of digital marketplace to share the interest for others to join in a project, search for partners according to their profiles and interest, and by driving the users in filling in all the necessary information of the users, the expectation, the type of data they're going to share, or the types of data they are going to use, and the limitations of the usage of the data, including risk mitigation measures. And the final outcome of running this digital solution is the generation of the legal contracts ready for the signing in the legal departments of the involved parties. We are now rolling out the projects in Italy. So I take the occasion to invite all the companies, especially small, medium enterprises, that want to validate the projects with us to contact us if interested in adopting this framework. Thanks for your attention. I hand over back to Gabriele.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this very enlightening and interesting presentation that gives us also a point of reflection about the reasons that are behind the reluctancy of some, especially small players, towards sharing data, towards open data pools, where the fear of data theft or other possible negative externalities keep them far from enabling this data economy, and of course all the, as you said, data-driven applications and innovative solutions. So very interesting in that regard, how an ecosystem manager can actually enable or facilitate in a sense this transition. So thank you very much. And now we pass to our next guest speaker, Dr. Christian Litke. Christian is the head of strategic alliances at KUKA AG. He has a multi-annual experience in production, operations, and plant management. And of course, as you all know, KUKA is one of the biggest players in terms of automation and robotics all over the world. So he will be able, of course, to give us a further perspective on how a company deals with data management, data sharing, and especially also which are actually the risks and opportunity behind sharing data. So thank you, Christian. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I think today we don't need to speak about the importance of data for a production environment and how it's going to change actually the the face of Earth in the future. Today, it's more about what the implication of this Data Act is actually like. So I hope you can see my slides now.
Yes, we are seeing it.
That's great.
Perfect.
So I have a little bit of a time delay here with my computer, but nevertheless, it should work. Now, let's talk about the general aspects. I mean, in principle, customers can access data via numerous open interfaces with protocols such as Profibus or Profinet or something like this, and this without even involving the manufacturer himself. Additionally to that, manufacturers offer multiple ways of acquiring or generating data, which are the basis for various digitization business models. And the data is then further used for analysis or well-known applications such as predictive maintenance or increasing energy efficiency or things like this. So having that said, nevertheless, the exchange of data between two parties is usually regulated by some kind of a contract, a legal framework that could cover remote services, customer support, some kind of application that runs on a computer and uses data that's generated in a production environment. And here, of course, both sides are fully aware of the use of data generated, as well as their use by or forwarding to third parties. Now, data exchange with uninvolved third parties usually does not occur for reasons, obvious reasons of secrecy also. But accordingly, I would say the industry is basically prepared or already fulfills many parts of the European Data Act. So we are not really scared about this right now. Now, data, and I have to state that, is actually an unprocessed commodity. And many regarded it for a long time to be the new oil. There were some movements around that. And as it turned out, nearly all data as a service business models have failed. So that part of the business simply didn't work. So we should rather see data as something different. We should see data as a new soil, because if it's nurtured, if it's cared for, it becomes a valuable asset. And it's important now to point out that data does not equal information. There's a slight difference in between that. Whereas data is almost freely available, information is some kind of processed data. It is interpreted and somehow enhanced by deep knowledge by someone who's deeply in the process. So this is a valuable good that's generally being sold. Now, what does this mean in terms of data sharing? I mean, the demand has already turned this technology push that was developed a couple of years ago into a market pull. Industrial companies have made their choice for standardized data formats, for open interfaces, and practical terms for data exchange. They refuse closed full-stack solutions that simply protect data in a way and make it unapplicable, but they favor open platforms that enable full data exchange and interoperability. I mean, Dr. Verhoeven already stated that. And this should work between the different suppliers in the entire supply chain. And this involves even big players and startups alike. And only by utilizing the best solution providers that the market has to offer, the full potential of digitization can actually be exploited. Now, the EU Data Act will actually regulate the exchange of data on a sound legal basis, which is a very good thing. It is therefore particularly important that the bill does not present the industry with any kind of excessive challenges. What this means, I'm going to explain. We have already established market conditions, such as defining interfaces which will result in slow communication or something like this. We already have applicable data protocols and so on. So what we need to prevent is actually that we are slowing down things by having oversized data packages or something like this. This would really hinder free data sharing, and in the worst case, bring it to a total stop. Now, why? Let's take a simple example from the B2C sector. Everybody of you knows fitness trackers, heart rate monitors, and their corresponding applications, and all the equipment you need around this. I'm sure many of you use it like I do myself. We are actually pretty open, if you're talking about security, in the way that we present our data. I mean, you can see the time your neighbor was running yesterday and things like this. Now, there is a data format for this. It's called AND+, and it's a common data transfer format in the sector. And it transfers data from your heart rate monitor, for example, to your watch. And later on, this is then transferred via Bluetooth on your cell phone or something like this, where you can access the data, where you can interpret it, where you can display it and do with it whatever you like. Now, this AND+ is actually a very compressed, totally incomprehensible, but yet open data format that is being used. And there's a good reason for it. It's supported by most companies in this specific business. And would we now request those companies to actually use it in a readable way so that everybody can put it in his editor or explorer and actually see what kind of information is there? Those data packages would simply increase by a size that they would consume so much power that the entire use case here would not work anymore, because your heart rate monitor then gets so big that you can't carry it around. So we have to be really careful with what we actually expect from companies supporting such formats in terms of not hindering our use cases there. And the same thing is, of course, applicable to the manufacturing industry. Now, at least for today, I would proclaim myself as a self-appointed representative of the industry. And I would really like to deeply encourage the EU legislature to consider well-established market standards in the law, and to rather promote the further development of open ecosystems. Now, we've just seen my dear colleague Andrea Gozzi from MindSphere, which is of course a very good example for an open interoperable ecosystem. But of course there are more, like Catena X, for example, for the automotive industry, which does great work there. Or we have the Open Industry 4.0 Alliance for the manufacturing sector, for the machine builders and component suppliers. And in those ecosystems, we always have like 100 or so companies who are already active, who are already living this data exchange, data sharing in a very good way, and they live this interoperability and even between different sized companies. I mean, if I just think of MindSphere, we have Siemens in there, and we have startup companies in there. So there is already some data exchange, and we have a profound basis for all this. Now, to sum it all up, is the EU Data Act actually beneficial for the industry? Definitely yes, for the B2C market. There's no question about it. And definitely yes, for non-EU companies, because we want to enable free markets and we want to protect the knowledge. Very important part. For EU-based B2B companies, it's maybe not that necessary right now. But since the market regulated itself to open interfaces, enabling to free data access and so on, but it will be a clear legal basis which helps us actually to enable more equal market conditions and to promote data sharing among companies. Now, needless to say, that data is our soil to ensure the global competitiveness of the European market. However, it is important to use established market standards here, and it's important to promote ecosystems which already facilitate this open data sharing and interoperability. Now, with this, I would like to close my part, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christian. It was particularly interesting, especially also the example about fitness tracker, to understand what a data package is, to understand what are we talking about when you talk about readable or downloadable formats of data, so that we can understand it better. Thank you for that, and thank you for tackling also the topic of Data Act and the differences between B2C and B2B, and what can be the risks or the non-necessity to have some further regulation on specific aspects of the data sharing practices. So thank you for that. We will come back to this topic for sure in a few minutes with the panel discussion. But before that, I want just to present our last guest speaker of today. So Ms. Arate Olaith. She is the Innovation and Project Manager at Ibarmia. Ibarmia is a medium enterprise which is in the network of Sesimo. It's located in the País Vascos in Spain, and a lot focused on research and innovation. Is a machine tool company. And with no further ado, I will leave the floor to Arate, who will explain to us better what Ibarmia does and what is the relationship that the company has with data sharing and all the practices related to it. So thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gabriele. I hope you can see my screen. It's okay?
Yes, we see it.
Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to Sesimo. After talking with Siemens and KUKA, we come to another kind of company. I will make a short introduction, because I'm sure that everybody knows the previous companies, but probably not Ibarmia. We are a machine tool builder, one of these SMEs that Philip explained at the beginning of this webinar. Okay, we produce machines. We customize machines. We are a machine tool builder. We design, produce, and deliver this kind of machines, and we make service for them all over the world. And we don't make standard products. Everything is customized. Just to make an idea, we make around 80 machines per year. These are some figures. We export almost all our production. I think it's quite a standard model of a standard kind of machine tool builder in Europe. And we have a huge history. We are making machine tools since 65 years, but we have a quite qualified and young team. This is one of the reasons that we are making this research continuously, and we have an integrated manufacturing. This is our way to maintain the quality. We are producing mainly in País Vasco, as you have explained, close to the border of France, but we have also production facilities in China and a commercial office in Germany. And okay, these are some figures that I wanted to show. We are around 180 employees all over the world, 130 and 40 more or less here in Spain, and we have been growing in the last few years, as you can see here. And I wanted to explain that just to have a look about which is the team we have here to develop things, and which is the situation where we have worked in this B2B data sharing context. Introducing the topic that is the key point of the webinar. When I started thinking a little bit about the presentation, and I talked to Gabriele, and we spoke about that, I want to share with you the experience, okay, our experience in the last years. And for us, one of the points that we are sometimes surprised is the understanding between this B2B data sharing, okay? And for us, there are some points that are not so clear, or where we don't find usually a common vision. When we start talking about B2B data sharing, it seems that everything has to be shared, okay? And we have to explain that, okay, the data companies are sharing depends on their business strategy, and not everything has to be shared. Another key point, sharing is not for free. We usually have this kind of problems, but sharing okay, but the business model sometimes is not clear, so it's not easy to have a result and to be honest, to be happy in the relationship. And last but not least, that companies have the control over the data we want to share, okay? And we have to fix the usage conditions. I don't know who, I think Andrea or I don't know who told before that sometimes when we play with big companies, they establish the rules, okay? And sometimes from our medium enterprise point of view, we face this kind of situations. Which is the motivation we have for B2B data sharing we see in our customers. But so I have seen we have seen a lot of inputs in this point. It's not so clear that companies are already making a huge business around this B2B data sharing. Maybe KUKA has another point of view, but from SME point of view, I think it's not so easy to have an income from that at this moment. But we are working on productivity, on sustainability, on agility. Okay, this is the kind of points that are motivating this B2B data sharing. Why it's not so easy? This is our traditional business until not now, but 5 years ago. Okay, we received data from our suppliers, and we have very small suppliers and very big companies. Siemens is one of our suppliers, but we can have a company with a critical supply that has 15 employees here around here, and we have worldwide suppliers. And then it's the same with the customers. We serve customers that are very, very small enterprises, and we have customers that are really big companies. But until now, we gave them to the customers, and this was quite static. Now the situation has changed completely, as you know, and it's because of that we are talking about this B2B data sharing. But now we need data from our suppliers, but they want and they need data from us. We have to give data to our customers, but we need their data also to give some new services. Customers, why not, can start sharing data between them. We have to connect our machines to other systems like KUKA robots or other systems that are already in the facilities of our customer. And we have new suppliers that comes from other kind of technologies and from other kind of business that are IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and everything is in a cloud. So the ecosystem has changed a lot and is changing very, very fast. And it's not easy from the machine tool builder point of view to have a position in this kind of ecosystem. We see also a trend, something like this, in big companies that are going more to the edge than to the cloud. So this kind of movements are also changing some of the parameters of this industry. From our experience, from our honest experience, which are the main barriers we have found until now, and we are focusing every day. The first barrier or critical point is, which is first, the technology or the business model. I think it's quite obvious this, but it's not easy when you start working in this data world to define from the beginning a business model. And the easiest is to start from the technology and start integrating some new technologies, some monitoring, some data sharing with some customers, like a pilot case or something like this. But if we don't have the business model defined, it's not easy to have a good result from this kind of projects. Another key point for us is the selection of key data. It seems to be evident also, but it's not easy to make a division between the data. A machine has already many data. It's not we don't need to put many sensors to have data from the machine. The data were already available since some years ago. But the point is to select which data can give us, the customer, the suppliers, or other actors, a value, okay, and a real value. And it's not an easy point. Another issue is about the people. We need new roles, new skills, new people. We need people with knowledge about software, but they have to speak with people which is mechanical or electronical. The language, the common language, sometimes it's not so easy to fix. And these new roles, usually we think about the technology and about the developments, but we need new roles even in the sales. I mean, we have to sell new products, new connected products. People who is selling needs different knowledge, different ways to sell. Okay, it's a point that affects all the company. Other point is the trust. It's not clear. There are not clear rules about property of the data. Security is another key point, and we have big discussions with some customers about this point. And even legal aspects are not easy to define sometimes, especially if we work with big companies. We focus on difficulties also to find the right partners and suppliers. Maybe we have to use this MindSphere system that Andrea has explained before. But everything is new in these technologies, and we need the right partners. But there are many companies offering different kind of solutions, and it's not easy to focus and find the right solution, the right partner. Not only because he has a technology, but also because the size or the way of understanding or the experience he already has in the machine tool sector. So it's another crucial point. We think a lot also about the investment and the risk. How many do we have to invest in this kind of data model? Which is the risk, because we can invest a huge amount of money, and we have done it, but we don't see always the result, and there are some risks about the definition that are not easy to assess. And another key point is the relationship management. First of all, we have to guarantee the interoperability among all the systems. It's a point also. I think a person before has talked about that, but it's key that all the smart systems can talk or can speak the same language. We need transparency, and we have to fix which are the rules that we have to manage this relationship. Okay, these are barriers, or these are points that where we have to work. But we are really convinced about opportunities that B2B data sharing and digitalization can offer to us. And just to show you an example, I have put here a reflection that we have done in the last months, work we have done with a consultancy about the services we can offer. We are offering now, and we can offer in the future. And the services, these are the services we are offering right now. It's not important to see each box, but just to see that the boxes that are with this black sign are the services where you're already using this data sharing. And when we think about the future, this is the roadmap of services that we are defining. And all the services are based on this B2B data sharing and B2B digitalization, and we have to fix an objective or a target where we want to increase the turnover of services in a 5% in the next 3-4 years. Just to explain that we see a big opportunity. It's not easy from from an SME point of view. But I think this software industry, it's an opportunity for all of us. And of course, from Ibarmia, we have to continue working with the right partners. I'm really convinced about the collaboration in this kind of matters, but we have to continue working in this kind of issues to be successful in this B2B sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arate. It was very insightful. Also because we kept the direct testimonial of medium enterprise at the end. So last but not least, and it was very, very interesting because we noticed how actually the priorities in terms of what are the main barriers or opportunities change according to the different size of the actor involved. And also we have some economic/operational reasons that can hinder this transition, let's say, towards a full exploitation of data economy in the entire environment of small and medium enterprises. So the entire ecosystem, industrial ecosystem in Europe. So thank you very much for this. We are perfectly on time. It's 12 a.m. So from now, we will start with some questions. Of course, I remind once again the audience, if they have any question, they can interact, they can leave their question in the Q&A box, and I will pass these questions to the guest speakers. In the meanwhile, I wanted just to start with a question to Ms. Verhoeven related to one of the first topics we've talked about at the beginning. So a very simple and initial question regards the approach taken by the Commission. So in particular, why actually the European Commission did the European Commission choose to use a user-centric approach? You said it's balanced, so we have some provisions for manufacturers, some for users, so data holders and data users, but actually we have a lot of, we notice a lot of safeguards and these kind of measures that gives us the impression of a user-centric approach. So what was the rationale behind it? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I would like actually to, in order to answer that question, I'd like to pick up to something that has been said by one of the previous speakers. If you look at current data sharing in Europe, indeed, our feeling is that a lot of B2B data sharing is already happening. It is market-driven. The real bottleneck that we were seeing was very much also in the B2C field, yeah? Where the smaller users, the users of data don't always have access to the data they eventually co-generate. So that idea led us to think that this is the area that we really need to tackle. Bring that user centricity. If I use an automated machine, I contribute to the data sharing, and therefore I should also have a right to make use of that data. And by doing so, I will actually help unlock a lot of new services, some of which have been mentioned, energy optimization and management, predictive maintenance, etc. So this explains very much the user-centric approach in the Data Act. Having said that, it is a horizontal instrument. It is looking at all relations, B2B, B2C, even B2G, as I mentioned before. So we have tried to come up with a comprehensive framework, but addressing in particular those issues where we saw the biggest need to go a little bit further via regulation and give the clarity all our stakeholders need in order to make data sharing an effective reality in Europe.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. I don't know if any of the other speakers want to add something more on these before going to the next one. So please feel free to intervene. Maybe Arate was without the microphone off. You wanted to say something?
Now it's clear. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. So surely it does make sense, considered also what has been said before by Christian and also underlined by Andrea. And in this regard, actually, so I wanted to ask the second question to Christian, because you talked about the fact that industry, and Amaryllis underlined it also, already mostly fulfills the requirements that are foreseen by the Data Act. So what are your thoughts? Let's try to deep dive a little bit more on what you said also before, you anticipated before. What are your thoughts in terms of practical implications, practical bottlenecks that could hinder the data sharing practices once the regulation as it is right now, the proposal, would be applied? So what do you think would be the main barriers in this sense?
Well, thank you for this question. Again, I have to say that Dr. Verhoeven already answered most of it, for the simple reason we need to have a right way to make data applicable to everybody, because only then it can be utilized. So we need to negotiate what kind of formats are we going to use and so on. And of course, in all I said, I was looking more at larger companies, and I can totally understand that for small-sized companies, this might be a problem in a certain sense. Yes, of course, this market is somehow dictated by some of the big players, but again, we have to stress that those organizations that form these ecosystems, but also other organizations, like in Germany, for example, the VDMA or so the Association of Machine Builders, they are actually forming those ideas, and they of course take into account what are common interfaces, common protocols, and so on that are applicable to everybody. So this is something that is really, really important for this entire topic. Now, what are the bottlenecks? I mean, we have to come up with good ideas for business models, because as a company, of course, you do not do something just for fun. There must be some business model behind it. And this business model, there you have to differentiate actually two different ways. One would be, how can I save myself some money? So for example, if I get data from running machines, I can somehow utilize those information to enhance my portfolio of services that I offer. So for example, do I always need to send out a technician if something is not running, or can I do something via remote access, for example? We saw it in the last example that for this machining centers, this is something that is already being offered, yes? And the other way would be, how can I actually find a business model where I as a company, but also my customers can actually benefit from. So this is some kind of value-added services that I can develop. So those are the simple two ways that I have to differentiate. And in those boundaries, I have to find good business models to make use of the data. And just as we're always talking about predictive maintenance, because it's the main use case for IoT that's always mentioned, you need a lot of data. I mean, it's very easy to do some artificial intelligence suggestions if you are Google and you have billions of clicks on certain topics each day. But as a machine builder, I mean, we as KUKA, we have an installation base of 300,000 robots worldwide, and not all of them are connected because some are older. So if you are looking for some kind of special case that is relevant for predictive maintenance, you need to dig really deep into the data, because we don't have so many machine breakdowns or so that we really can find a pattern in that. And I can assume this is even worse for companies who have well, fewer machines installed in the world. So we live on this topic of data exchange. We need the data from our customers in order to make our machines better, in order to serve our customers better in the future. And nevertheless, if you earn money with it or not, I mean, you will earn money if you actually are still competitive in the market and you are able to sell your units in future years. So it's not always that you need to put a price tag on it. It might be that you just somehow protect your market access for the future by offering digital solutions.
Very, very clear. Basically, we are noticing that there is quite of an alignment in terms of topics and direction where to go. Also building on what has been said before, and yeah, in this regard, like talking about possible bottlenecks and barriers, and we've underlined it a lot, but I just wanted to make it a bit clear. So I wanted to ask the following question to Arate. Among those barriers that you underlined, so we have talked about specific business models, human resources need in terms of new skills and applicable to new technologies, or also technical operational support, legal support. What is, in your opinion, among all those aspects, the most important, the most relevant? Where would you put your priorities?
For us, the main I don't know if barrier is the word, but one of the points is the human resources or skills, because some other things you have suppliers, okay, and you have different platforms where you can go, but we come from the mechanical, okay? We come from the mechanical. We of course we have the electronics on board, but software is very new for us, very new and I think for almost all the machine tool builders. So we are not so familiar with this kind of technologies, and when we start, the business model is really different. It's I don't know, a small detail. The way of the subscription, okay? The business model of the software, where we have a subscription where we pay an amount per year. It's easy for us to understand when we talk about B2C and different applications we have on our cell phone, okay? But it's not so easy to understand when we are dealing about a new machining center where you should pay a subscription every year to have some services. It's there are strange conversations right now, okay? And it's not easy from our side and neither from the customer side. There is the market is not so prepared for some conversations sometimes, okay? The customers are not so prepared for some conversations. So there are some topics where, okay, we are talking about now, and everybody is very, very convinced about the importance of B2B share. You know, Christian told at the beginning, we are not talking about if it's important or not. Okay, I fully agree with you. But when we come to the market and we go with an offer about the new machining center, and we try to convince him that we need his data because he will be his business and our business can improve if we get them. It's not so easy to have this kind of conversation. They are mostly thinking about, okay, I want to know if my machine is running or not, maybe remotely, and okay, you can have some remote support, but quite basic things. Okay, when we start talking about this predictive maintenance, and we're a little bit far from that from our point of view in some customers. It's not general, but it's not the industry is not so prepared about that. And I think the main barrier is the human resources are the main barrier, because we don't have this kind of people, but our customers don't have this kind of people. We have many data, amounts and amounts of data, and now we have to analyze them to improve the business model Christian explained before. We want to improve our product based on this kind of this data. Okay, we have the data, and now we have to analyze them and define if this behavior of the machine is normal or not. It's normal when it's 3, but not normal when it's 2. It's not easy to find the right profiles to make this kind of job inside the company, because they have to join many knowledge in this kind of projects. So for us, is the key point is the skills, the people, and the new knowledge.
Thank you, thank you. I think this is probably a cross-sectoral problem, the reluctancy to go towards digital innovations, digital applications, the fear of losing something because it's too linked to the tradition way of doing things. It's something that we find many times. I don't know if on that Amaryllis want to add something, just to reply to Arate, but I feel that the skills problem with the reskilling and inside company reskilling is cross-sectoral, and it's in the plan, in the general plan of the Commission.
Yes. Yes, indeed, if I can quickly jump in. As you may know, we are actually taking a very deep look into all the various ecosystems in order to see what needs to be done in order to boost digital transformation. And in all the sectors, I mean, data sharing is usually flagged as one of the issues, as an opportunity, also sometimes as a challenge where there are problems. But one common problem that we note in all our ecosystems is indeed skills problem. Skills, and at all levels. Yeah, it's skills for the people in factories, in enterprises that are uncertain about the new digital opportunities, but it is also a lack of awareness about what are the business models that can make us help the transition, and why should I do it? How can digital help me become more competitive in my sector? What's the business model? How can digital help me become more sustainable, more greener, less dependent on all the time increasing energy prices? Yeah, these are the questions that we are getting. So we see indeed a huge challenge in terms of skilling, but at all levels. Skilling also in terms of, you know, exchanging, having debates about why is digitalization actually a good thing for you in your sector. That's where it all starts. And usually then the rest of the problems, the technical problems and the legal problems, we can find solutions, but there is still a huge chantier out there. I completely agree with you.
Perfect, thank you. So just to stay on the topic of different actors involved and touched by the Data Act, I wanted to ask the following question to Andrea, and it's related to other actors that we've been mentioning, but they're not directly involved in this data sharing from different perspectives. So I'm referring to basically industrial IoT device suppliers or cloud service providers. In this case, what do you think are the implications to those actors of the Data Act if we refer to the current state of art? Do you think that provisions in the Data Act could actually could improve and foster the diffusion of service provider in European service providers? They could have implications on international data transfer. What's your opinion on that, about the current state of art and the implication that the Data Act could have?
Yes, thanks, Gabriele. Let's start with the current state of the art. We assessed the many manufacturing companies started quite early to develop their own solution, their own IoT solution. We met many machine builders, for example, that in order not to be forced to give the data away to their customer, they propose an in-house built solution. Doing some important investment, typically on the most common hyperscaler cloud infrastructure companies, and they realize quite good solutions in terms of technology, but they struggle in having those accepted by their customers because there is no standard behind, and especially the big customers doesn't want to stitch with an IoT solution maintained, developed, and managed by a single machine builder. especially if it is a small, medium ones, not the big ones. The reason it's simple. A machine builder, an automation buyer, buys automation machines, robots, automated guided vehicle from many suppliers, and they don't want to have one different IoT platform for each different piece of equipment they have in the factory. They want one single solution to fit all, and so the situation is the opposite. Sometimes the big buyer try to impose the solution to the small ones, but this is not a good way in similar situation, because they are pushing each manufacturer to get ready to interact with an unknown platform. And when the big one impose the use of the platform or the data, it's also destroying value, because most of the data coming out from a machine are useless in the hands of the machine user. They're useful only in the hands of the machine builder, because they are data that has to be used together with the machine technology itself. So we welcome the Data Act, definitely. And we see that the Data Act will push even further the necessity to adopt ecosystem platform. So we discourage every machine builder or machine buyer to build its own IoT platform by leveraging of the hyperscaler, whatever it is. We suggest to adopt an ecosystem by doing synergies with others. There are different ecosystems. Of course, we have our preferred ecosystem, which is MindSphere ecosystem, but there are others like Adamos, the German Adamos, Catena X. There will be others. And our message is, don't go alone. Choose the best ecosystem for you. You can choose 2 ecosystems, maybe not one only ecosystem, but don't go alone.
Thank you, Andrea, for that answer. And since we are we are going towards the end of this webinar, I wanted to tackle another issue that was mentioned at the beginning, but then we didn't further analyze it. So it's related basically to international data transfer, because at the beginning we've said that the Data Act is addressed to unwanted international data transfer to third parties. So we wanted just to have some clarifications on that. And for this reason, I wanted to ask the first question to Dr. Amaryllis Verhoeven. So what the Data Act foresees some restrictions in international data transfer when it comes to unwanted use or misuse outside the EU. So data transfer, as we have noticed, will be allowed only in those countries where national legislation has similar provision to the regulation that will be published. So could you please explain us how the Commission actually wants to take into account the data flows among the EU and especially UK and the US, which in this moment are very important in terms of relationships, supply chains, data transfer, etc. So how is this planned to be? There will be other will there be other provisions, other pieces of legislation in that regard? How is the plan of the Commission?
Okay, well, thank you very much for this question. Indeed, in the Data Act, there are some safeguards that would help our businesses being better protected against any unlawful transfers of their data to third countries. The provisions are not really new in the sense that they were already incorporated in the Data Governance Act, and they have also met with political agreement there. Now, the idea is not to stop data flows across the borders of the European Union. That's not the idea. Because cross-border data transfers are, of course, a reality, an economic reality, and also a good reality. The idea is really to stop those data flows that are unlawful and can really hamper the interests of our businesses here. And in order to do so, the principle is the following. Basically, if you as a user, you store your data with a data holder who promises to keep your data in the European Union, then you should also be able to trust that promise. Yeah? And that means that in case there are requests coming from a third country, in circumstances where it can be seen that the request is completely disproportionate or is not abiding by the core values to which we attach, such as the request to get a judicial review. If all these basic requirements are not respected, then the data holder should have a right to say no. In these circumstances, no. That doesn't amount to us requiring full adequacy as we do in the GDPR sector. But we do require a basic respect of a number of strong safeguards in order to make sure that the data that European consumers and businesses end up storing is also stored in a truly safe place. That's basically the idea behind it.
Very, very clear, very clear. I just wanted to ask you this question because we received a lot of inputs from different companies looking for information on that and clarification. So it's very helpful. And on that, I wanted to conclude my questions with a last one to Christian, related to the same topic, basically. So given that KUKA has a global role and global interactions, so how do you feel and how do you think will be the interactions with third parties or third companies outside the EU, if there will be, in your opinion, bottlenecks related to the control, to the enforcement of these safeguards when it will be the time of the application?
Well, everything's already said. So we have a legal basis, and that's a great thing for all of us. I mean, if there are criminal interactions, of course, you can, by no law in the world, you can actually hinder people from doing criminal stuff with your data. But if we have a found legal basis, then actually we make it harder for them. And so yes, this happens all over the world in different ways. But what we need to enforce actually is we need to have a common basis for exchanging data, for using data, no matter in what company it is. And of course, we need to somehow protect EU rights and EU interests, and those of especially of smaller companies who are also working on a worldwide level. So yes, I'm absolutely sure the Data Act will help us in this case. Of course, it will not prevent things, but it will help us to have a good legal basis. And I mean, we cannot always judge the world by a couple of companies who do things wrong. And you know, there's a lot of discussions always about China. There's a lot of discussions about American companies, and most of these companies respect all the laws, and they respect local laws in the EU and so on as well. Of course, there are some companies who have problems with this, and now with the EU Data Act, we have a way to enforce these laws. So in that sense, it's definitely a great help.
Perfect. Thank you for that, which confirms the alignment that we've noticed this morning. So please feel free to ask some last-minute questions. I'm referring to the audience, or to intervene and add some final thoughts on what has been discussed today. If you want to just finalize a position statement, or just something that you didn't have the chance to touch upon. So please feel free, because we are going towards the end of this very interesting and insightful webinar. So I see there are no questions from the audience. So with that said, I really wanted to thank you, all of you, for your participation, for your insights, for the different perspectives that we've seen today. Different perspectives, but similar issues, similar problems, similar considerations, and this is surely a good brick to build on, because it gives us the impression that the Commission is working hard on that and is hearing the necessities, the needs, and the discussion that are going on in the industry ecosystem. So thank you again, all of you. Thank you, Sesimo, for organizing this, and I wish you a good rest of the morning and a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.